Welcome to the Fish Files. This little episode we put together is a fun one because I took wild African species that we have in the warehouse and I'm going to show them to you, and with the exception of one of the species, all of these are very suitable for home aquariums. One of them is really suitable for just being a pet, a solo, like the tiger Oscar and some other certain species. It's really good eventually as it grows out to just be a solo pet fish. But we'll save that one for last. First, I want to start with these really cool wild species. All these came from Nigeria, with the exception of the very rare Samoan tiger scat that came from Somalia. So I'm going to start with African catfish. The whole family is called Synodontis, and the Synodontis family has about 48 species. You're likely to see in the trade about a dozen of them. Most wild caught Synodontis you really don't see in the pet trade. Very few species from the wild are actually exported anymore from Africa to Europe or the United States. A little more to Europe though. The reason is, before we go into these wild African species, I'll explain how they get into the aquarium trade. You contract with a Nigerian agent who puts together, just like the Bogota and Colombia distributors, puts together catching lists to aquarium fish catchers down, but they're basically fishermen, down in the waters of Tanganyika, most commonly in Lake Malawi. And Nigeria is the primary source of export for most African species. You contract with this guy, he gets the order together, he's the one that gets them from the river into proper packages, and then that goes onto a Lufthansa plane that goes all the way up to Germany and then all the way over to Los Angeles. It's a tough journey for these fish, and I don't do it anymore. Now, quicker journey is Lufthansa directly to Miami. We have a broker in Miami that holds the fish for us, and we just pull them from him. It's much safer for the fish. Everyone gets a much healthier species. The DOA, or dead on arrival rate, goes down to almost zero. So better all around for everybody in the world. Problem with African species in general though is, noted I said the Congo. The Congo has exploded in population, and there's very, very little wildlife left in the Congo. So there's now only a few species that you can get on a regular basis from that region of the world. It's pretty much just overrun with people. And I don't know if you know this, in 20 years, Nigeria is projected to be the #1 population country in the world. India just surpassed China, and then Nigeria is supposed to surpass India. Whatever, global warming, again, has never killed a fish, but people sure have. So now what happens in Nigeria, you try and do an order and it's impossible. All those agents now live in London. They don't want to deal with that crazy place. And so Nigeria, just in the time I've been in the business, has changed completely. And it's out of control now. So I use a broker. But that being said, now let's talk about fish. Okay, so this is a large Synodontis. You won't really probably see this in the trade, primarily because he's not that desirable, but he's rare. It's not a multipunctatus. Those you'll see, those are bred. This is a multimaculatus, Synodontis multimaculatus. Wild caught. I got him when he was about this big, and now he's full grown. They like driftwood. They like little areas. Maybe give them a little PVC pipe to hide at night. I threw in with that some African cichlids, Malawi, Libidinochromuses, to make a point. I cannot get true wild African cichlids. I get plenty of South American cichlids, but African cichlids, by now the waterways are so polluted and overrun that it's virtually impossible to get good stock on a consistent basis. And if you do, it's so expensive compared to the bred stock that it's not worth it, except for a few hobbyists that have to have that wild species. So I don't offer it to the pet stores. The price would be outrageous. Basically tenfold more than just the bred stock that we import from Florida and from Asia. But I threw some in here because these are like 10,000. They've been bred and bred and bred. Because when you look at African species, you're going to see this term F0, F1, F2. It stands for first filial is F1, first filial, second filial is F2. It's a biological term, just means both parents are from the wild, that's an F0. And if they're both parents from the wild and bred a kid, fry baby fish. So they had a baby or a bunch of babies, that's an F1. F1's domestic and one's wild, that's not an F1. You'll see people selling F1s on the internet. I'm very, very dubious. I don't even bother with playing that game. F1s, F2s, I mean, if you have F1, it's easy to say you have an F2. I don't, personally, I have a hard time believing 90% of them. There are some legit guys out there. Beware of your source. Don't accept it. See if you maybe, you know what you could do? See the packing list of the, if he's saying they're from wild parents, ask them to see that packing list. The packing list will list them, and it'll list the date and who it's going to. If it's going to him or someone he's breeding from, that's fine. Contact us and we'll let you know if the guy's legit, because I think we can find most of the importers of African cichlids. So anyways, that's the F1, F2, F2. So we're not going to go into cichlids. We're going into wild, oddball African stock, and we're starting with this guy, this Synodontis. We've been raising him here for 12 years. He's had no problem adjusting to different fish tanks as we've had to move them around. Synodontis are tough. One thing I would say about African fish, including cichlids, even if they're F1000, they are tough fish. I want to throw in one more Synodontis so you see a dwarf Synodontis, and you can see a nice comparison between the two. These are Synodontis petricola, and these guys are very pretty. These you will see in the trade. They're common and they're expensive. They're typically $24 to $29 in the store, and they are generally now all tank raised. Generally all, that's an oxymoron. They're generally tank raised. I've never seen an F0, F1 Synodontis petricola. I get these from Indonesia, and these are a good size. This is close to grown up. They get about that big. These guys are about that big. Most of the time I get them in about this size. So this is a good size. If you see this size in your aquarium store, you're lucky. And if you're looking for one, just grab it. These guys are typically just like the Synodontis Maculatus. The Synodontis petricolae are super hardy, but unlike him, they won't dig up your plants and chase fish around. Or if you're trying to breed fish, they won't go in at night and eat all the eggs. These guys are pretty nice, safe community Synodontis catfish. That's just a taste of what the Synodontis are out there. Fortunately, the one that's easy to find in pet stores is a Synodontis petricola, and it's a good companion for the fish. It's hardy and it's very pretty. The other one's not so pretty, and you will never find it anyways. And now we have the classic Gnathonemus pretersi, the elephant nose. Elephant nose fish are very finicky eaters, but wonderful for the aquarium because they just look so unusual and they don't harm the other species. But they do need frozen bloodworms, and you need to make sure they acclimate to them because they'll get skinny and die off on you if you don't. So I would say for that reason, elephant nose are medium to expert aquarium hobbyist fish. Anything that requires frozen foods, the rule of thumb is it's not for a beginner, even though you can buy frozen foods anywhere. I don't know what there's so much, I shouldn't say that. Just try the fish out. Get them frozen bloodworms, even if you've never had aquarium experience ever. It's a really cool fish and you'll learn a lot. But this is the elephant nose. They use elocution, not electrocution, elocution, not like the electric eel. Those come from Peru. These guys put out electric waves to find prey, kind of like a bat uses sonar. These guys use electricity. So it pushes out, they sense that there might be a little critter in the gravel, and they take their little nose and they suck it up. That's the elephant nose. That's how he works. You won't be able to breed him in your fish tank. These guys only come from the wild, but they are really fantastic looking, almost like alien looking species. In that species, there's a couple other fish that you'll see in the trade: baby whales and baby dolphins, unrelated to actually obviously dolphins and whales. It just, they have a similar shape, and they can get up to a foot. The baby whale and baby dolphin, they're fun fish, but they can get a little nippy as they get larger. So just beware of those, but they're in the same family. They look very cool, but they're a little meaner. Great with African cichlids, but not with gentle community fish. And I don't have any in the warehouse, so you're not gonna see any, but you can look them up. Now, I want to go to the African rope fish. And these guys are funny because they will play possum on my guys, and which is foolish because they think they're dead. They might put them in the freezer. They're predators, small insect larvae predators, so they'll need, like the elephant nose, frozen bloodworms. They're a little less finicky. They do some scavenging, but once they settle into the tank, they're very, very hardy. You have to keep a close eye on the elephant nose, make sure the water's warm enough, make sure the water's clean enough, make sure he's got access to frozen bloodworms. This guy, a little more hardy. He can handle a little more stress as far as temperature changes. All these guys are good for moderate pH too, because African waters are around 8. So these guys around 8's no problem with these. 7.5's no problem. I wouldn't put African fish in the 6's though. Any of the species I'm showing you on this little episode. It's also called the reed fish, African reed fish, African rope fish. Wild caught, comes from Nigeria. And they typically come in a pretty good size. They're generally around 8-9 inches when you buy them in the pet store. Not uncommon. You will find these, they're easy to catch and easy to export. I bring these in from my broker in Miami. They are a true fish though. They are not an eel. They like to hang around driftwood. Maybe give them a PVC pipe or a little cave. Some of them are shy and like to crawl in there. They'll move around quite a bit for you. They're not like eels sometimes that dig in the sand and disappear. Now, all these African fish I'm showing, none of these are nano species. So even the Petricola would be a little tough in a 4-gallon, 3-gallon tank. I'd say minimum tank size for any of these fish is 10 gallons and probably 20 gallons for something like an African rope fish. And the butterfly fish and the rest of them. Petricola, maybe you can go down to a 5-gallon tank, but nothing smaller. This guy, nothing smaller than a 20-gallon tank. They need room to swim. Otherwise, they get cramped, stresses them out, and they get sick, and then they die. I think if you've seen the episodes before, you've seen the tanks we actually hold these kind of fish in. They're 80-gallon proper holding tanks. We don't keep fish in this. This is just for display, so don't do this at home. And now I'm moving on to two very different species because one inhabits the top of your aquarium and one inhabits the bottom of your aquarium. The bottom aquarium inhabitor is a filter shrimp, and the largest filter shrimp you're going to find in fresh water. It's called a vampire shrimp. They get about 4 inches in length and they will not harm a fly or a shrimp. They filter anything floating through the water. You just constantly see them moving their little legs and putting their little mouth. And for that reason, they're nice. They're not, they don't eat enough from the water to clean the water, but they do scrub it a little bit. Most of the time, if they can't find floating debris in the water, they'll find it just going along the rocks and the sand in your aquarium or gravel. They are hardy. They are good scavengers, but like I said, most of the time they spend their time trying to pull little pieces of food and plant material from the water. And the other species I threw in here is a very unique species. It's called the African butterfly fish. Oh, by the way, both these retail for about the same price. They're wild caught. They cannot be bred yet, and they probably retail for in that $24 to $29 range, maybe up to $39 depending on the season. These guys are compatible, but the butterfly fish, again, I said he's at the top. Normally he's at the top, except I'm talking down on him, so he's floating in the bottom. But they inhabit the top of streams and around slow-moving water, and they'll lift like a flying fish. They are basically a flying fish. So you'll have to have a lid on your aquarium for the butterfly fish. They'll float and grab the insect and go back into the water. But they do eat small feeder guppies. They eat frozen bloodworms. They eat flake food. They're pretty adaptable to the aquarium, but they will eat the smallest fish in your fish tank. All right, this is a very fun fish, but not for your community tank. This is the African lungfish. And the problem with keeping the African lungfish with other fish, including other lungfish, is that at night they're nocturnal and they will actually take bites out of sleeping fish, and that's how they eat. So they're kind of creepy in that way. So they are carnivores, but they will eat cichlid pellets. You can put in chopped pieces of beef if you want. They'll eat frozen foods. They're pretty easy to feed, and they grow big. These guys are going to grow 3 feet with a big fat body, and actually they can grow up to 40 inches. And in the wild, they have evolved to handle the drought in Africa, and they can live up to 20 years without water. What they do is when the water recedes, they dig a hole into the mud and they put a mucus cocoon around them, roll in a little coil, and that little painter that they've made for themselves keeps them alive until the next rainy season, even if it's 20 years down the road. I don't know what happens on the 21st year. I assume they die. But the reason we know this is because, to my knowledge, any scientists actually kept a camera on one of these guys underground for 20 years. But the natives, back when they did have natives and huts by rivers and lakes in Africa, that's all gone, by the way. Everyone has jeans and cell phones these days. They would cut these guys out, keep them in their huts, and save them for a rainy day, no pun intended. Cut it open, and they'd have somewhat fresh fish, even if it was like 5 years old. I don't know if you call it fresh. It's alive, but it's been sitting in a mucus block for 5 years. I guess it's fresh. But they obviously they're in a dormant state, or they need food, but they stay in a dormant state, and that is it's a fantastic prehistoric looking fish. So this is a small one. This is about as small as they come in the trade. I call this about 6 to 7 inches. When they get big, they don't look any different. They just look bigger. I do want to mention the price point on something like this, a lungfish. Even a small size is going to be close to $100. A big one's probably getting closer to $150 to $200. It's a lot of handling. You can't pack them more than one in a bag, so shipping Lufthansa all the way over. They are worth it though if you want a really exotic prehistoric pet fish, and you want something that's you can keep for 30 years, and then you can freeze them and eat them 20 years later. This is a fish for you. Yeah, and as I mentioned, when you pack them, you can only pack them one at a time because they'll bite each other. Okay, I said I was going to try and stay with F0 on this whole presentation, but it couldn't be avoided when it comes to bikers. Some people call them bichers, I call them bikers. But Polypterus bikers they come in different patterns. Each pattern is a different species. In here I have two primary species that you'll find in the trade. They're tank raised now in Indonesia. Again, because it's problematic bringing these guys over. They bite each other and you can't pack them more than one in a bag. We have the armored biker, and we have the ornate biker, Ornatopinus or Delhaize biker. The Ornatopinus or ornate biker has many markings over its tan body, just a very pretty black pattern, and it's a predator. These are both predators. They both get around the 12-inch size, but they don't go after fish. They don't bite them at night like the lungfish that we just showed you. They can be good community fish. You just, like all fish, you just can't keep them with other fish that can fit in their mouth. That's the general rule on bikers. They do scavenge a bit. They're carnivores. If you're worried if they're not getting enough food, you can always put some frozen food in there for them. But you'll know they'll start skinnying up, which as soon as you see a fish starting to get skinny, you have a nutrition problem, and you got to change the food on them as quickly as possible, because eventually it's going to be too late. So just keep an eye on them. Make sure that they're getting everything they need. The armored biker also has a nice pattern, or it's also called the Delhaize biker, but not as deep and rich as the ornate biker. It's also about half the price of the ornate. It's like the more ornate it is, the more expensive it gets. And then the wild ones, of course, are a little more expensive than these guys because you're paying for shipping. But that's really all you're paying for. That's the only difference. They're not any prettier. I think the ornate biker is about as pretty as they get when it comes to bikers. Delhaize's also very fine. Then the most common is just called the Senegal biker. Tank raised, just blah gray, but very cool body shape. Looks just like these guys, acts just like these guys, just doesn't have that mottled and striped pattern on its body. And then they have an albino version that you'll see in the pet stores. Albino, so those are the four most common ones you'll see in the store. The Senegal albino, Senegal regular, and they're very inexpensive. Those ones you can get for 20 bucks. Then you get the ornate biker and the Delhaize biker or armored biker. The ornate's probably 49 bucks, and the Delhaize is 29 bucks to 39 bucks. So those are the price points, and those are the bikers that you will see in your store. Predator fish are fast and they can jump. They look very deceptive. Most of these guys are camouflage predators. That's why they have this mottled tan and black pattern. And when they want to go and catch something, they're quick. So make sure you have a little gap between the top of your tank. Probably a good 3 inches will take care of that. Or have a cover on your tank if you're going to keep a biker in your aquarium, because they can, if they're chasing fish, accidentally jump out of the aquarium and then you're out $50 and a lot of pain and suffering. I have one more group of fish I want to show you. I didn't really include them in this particular setup because first, they are fast and they would not be able to stay in this. They jump right out. The other is you're not going to find them in a pet store. In fact, I think there's only one retailer in the country that has these fish. It's aquariumfish.com. They are Somalian tiger scats, or Somalian golden scats. They come from Somalia, and they are seldom seen because Somalia is not really a shipping point anymore for freshwater fish. But saltwater guys do get fish from the seas around there, and once in a while someone inland will catch some rare fish. I got these from Joe Stiebel. He's a few miles away. I got to say one thing about him. He is a founder. He owned the very first wholesale operation here. He's 94 now in the LA area, and he's still active, which is really cool. His son's helping him run the business now. And he brought over, in fact, his son brought over 4 of these Somalian tiger scats for us. So we're gonna go take a look at these guys. And I'll tell you a little bit more about them when we're out here. Here they are. Here's my little guys. Hello, Scatoph. What are they, Dana? Our sales manager looked up their scientific name. Scatophagus tetracanthus? Scatophagus tetracanthus, the Somalian tiger scat. These are so rare that you will not find these anywhere. You'll find them listed, and then you go, oh, they're only $150 or $180, and then you'll say, I want one, and they'll say, email me when back in stock. Watch that game. A lot of the players, I know aquariumfish.com doesn't play this game. Live Aquaria does not play this game, but a lot of the other guys will put, when they're out of stock of fish, they'll lower the price to get you to look at it and hope you buy some of their other fish. And you'll see that's for this tiger scat. You'll see some lower prices. They're really going to be more like $250, $300, because they're hard to get. And I to my knowledge, these are only 4 right now that are around available for sale. And we do fulfillment for aquariumfish.com, so that's why. But also, though, we have some good independent pet stores. If Capital Exotic in DC, we have Mark's Tropical Fish, Underwater World, Underwater Depot here in LA. A lot of good fish stores, Exotic Pet and Canoga Park. These guys will bring those in if they have a special request. So if you have a pet store, aquarium store, go in and ask them for a fish. Don't worry about what they got in stock. They have to sell fish, so they have to buy fish. So every couple weeks they're bringing in new fish from people like me. So just make your special request. Be aware of the low prices and out of stocks on. It's not just that market. People do it in shoes, socks, dresses. I don't think it's a good game. At least you don't get that in the brick and mortar stores. But online, that's a silly game that the retailers play, and I think it's very deceptive. Couple things about this particular scat that makes it so special. First, it's 100% freshwater. Scats generally are brackish or salt water. These guys are 100% freshwater. Look at it, they're just following my hand. So they're amazing aquarium pets. They're very adaptable, obviously, to the aquarium. Hi guys. And they eat like crazy and grow like crazy. These guys will grow to 2 feet. They'll grow this big over time and look just as big and beautiful as they do in the smaller size. They are so gentle. They might bump a fish when they're running around, and they chase each other quite a bit. In fact, it looks like they beat each other up even more than discus do, when they clobber each other. But as you can see, these guys have been together for 2 months now, and they never fight. You can feed them lettuce from your refrigerator. They'll gobble it up. It'll all be gone the next day. I give them flake food. I'll give them a little bit of Sarah community flake food right now. There's my demonstration. They love flake food. They're like piranhas on it. So if you can get your hands on these fish and you got the money and the tank size, because remember, these guys are going to grow bigger than a pacu. They're great tanks. They're great pet fish. So I want to just point this out. This is how crazy hungry these guys are all the time. We found we could just feed them when our swords start getting brown, we can't sell them to customers, so we usually throw them away. But now that we have these guys, if there are a few brown leaves on there, we throw them in this tank and they just gobble them up. So we found a new use for old plants. I just wanted to show you some very special fish before we sign out. If you want them, you're going to have to go right now to aquariumfish.com. But, you know, down the road, what is it? Because I don't know when you're going to watch this episode. It's December 6th, 2024. But down the road, someone else might bring some in. So keep an eye out. Well, thank you for watching the show, and I hope you liked it and you like and subscribe to us. I think at this point we've got almost 16,000 people that have subscribed, and we're also on, where are we on, producer? We're on Instagram and TikTok. Is it the same? Is it like the Fish Files? Or I'm so old, I don't even go to Instagram and TikTok. I'm sorry. I will. I'm too busy feeding fish. I did want to stress how just essential the African fish are if you want to do a fish tank that represents the whole world, that there are plenty of species from Africa that are available. I showed you some of the hardest to find because they're all the wild caught ones, but there's Congo tetras, there's the African dwarf frog. The African dwarf frog is like a must for every little peaceful community tank. There's plenty of F1 million cichlids, and they're fantastic. Some are peaceful, some you can put, like the Tamazi cichlid, you can put in a nice peaceful aquarium tank with tetras, and you don't have to have just a mean African fish tank. It's a great continent. Please don't ignore it if you're in the hobby, and don't worry about all those people that say you can't mix this with that and that, because it's a hobby. You experiment, you try things out, enjoy it. And if there's a fish that looks like it's getting beat up, just separate it. Always have a little quarantine tank, and that'll make the whole process a lot easier for you. You can't do any of that though, because if you don't have a fish tank, you're left out. So most importantly, to get an aquarium.